Okay, so welcome to the YouTube. Really should think of a better intro than okay, so. What's up, guys? Liam Watson, IFBB Pro here.
Lord, what a sad little life, Jane.
What a dickhead. So, in today's video, we are going to be going over my blood work. Ooh, blood work. But it is the blood work post cycle that got me my IFBB Pro card. Should probably start like a little counter or something up here for each time I mention IFBB or Pro card, because I'm going to milk the shit out of it. It's going to get mentioned a lot. But anyway, these bloods were taken 4 days after the steroid cycle that got me my Pro card. It goes without saying, this is not advice. I'm not a medical professional. I'm just a fairly well educated meathead at the end of the day. So take everything I say with a pinch of salt, and please, anything I say about gear, don't fucking copy it, right? I am a professional fucking bodybuilder. I'm going to take a lot more gear than anyone else has any fucking right to. So please, don't copy me. Try and just take some kind of educational value, or maybe fucking hell, even some entertainment value out of this video. But without any more fucking waffle and shite, I should really have a fucking swear counter as well somewhere up here. Without any more waffling shite, let's just get straight into the blood work, because I do not know how to talk to a camera unless I'm talking about something like blood work. Welcome to my blood work. Yeah, there's some reds here right off the bat, but all things considered, I was actually very happy with these results. There are really only two biomarkers that are out of range to a point where I need to actively seek to rectify them. Everything else was pretty much fine, and there were a lot of things in here that were surprisingly, I'm not going to say surprisingly good, but surprisingly fine is probably the best word to describe them. But let's get straight into them. I don't want this video to be an hour long, so I'm going to brush over most of the things that are either not particularly relevant or are completely fine, and just talk about the things that are slightly out of range or the things that are a little bit more important. So we'll dive straight into red blood cells. Now, when I talk about things that are surprisingly fine, actually hemoglobin and hematocrit, surprisingly good. They're actually very good. Now, these are things you might quite often see in bodybuilders, PED users, or even just generally bigger people that might climb out of range. So your hemoglobin is a protein that carries oxygen in the blood, and when you have elevated levels of hemoglobin, it just shows that the body is having a little bit more trouble transporting said oxygen, which can quite often be seen in larger individuals. I guess this just means I'm fucking skinny and I need more muscle. But no, very good levels, as you can see, slap bang in the middle of the range. Hematocrit essentially is a measure of how viscous, how thick the blood is. So it's a measure of space in the blood. It's out of range. We're going to see that blood's a little bit thicker. There's a little bit less empty space in it between the actual red cells themselves. It's fine here, which is fantastic, because when these bloods were taken, it was a little bit like watching Hartley's strawberry jelly being squeezed out my vein, and it was slightly worrying to say the least. But it turns out we're all good. Now, we go straight down to RDW, which is red cell distribution width, which is out of range. Essentially, it measures the distribution width between the largest red cell and the smallest red cell, the kind of average change. I guess I'm wording that fucking terribly. It is slightly out of range, but given the fact that everything else here is perfectly in range, it's not something I'm at all worried about, which is why when you look at blood results, it's important to get as comprehensive a panel as possible, because quite often one result in isolation means absolutely nothing unless you can see corresponding results alongside it. So yes, my red cell distribution width is slightly out, but given the fact that my hemoglobin, my hematocrit, my overall red cell count is completely fine, we can kind of just brush over that a little bit. So going to white cells here. Now, 2 of them are slightly high. This is not, lymphocytes is slightly low, monocytes is slightly high. Now, lymphocytes is going to be out of range when your body is fighting off some kind of infection. It is that time of year. I was also at a show all weekend with coming into contact with however many hundreds of people, then train to and from London. Yes, I probably picked up some kind of cold. You might be able to hear it in me now. I'm a bit fucking sniffly. It's all good. Just generally shows that there is some kind of infection that your body is fighting off. We're completely fine. Monocytes is going to show a little bit more around trauma, so tissue damage or things like that. Because I don't have any, as far as I'm aware, I don't have any specific tissue related injuries. I would just say this is just probably a general marker of general inflammation. Again, it's completely fine, and we look at the rest of the white cells, they're all in range, so really nothing at all to worry about here. Could look at our clotting status. Again, something you want to be very mindful of as a bodybuilder and a PED user is your blood clotting status, particularly your MPV, which is your mean platelet volume. This is the average size of the actual platelets. It can be seen in bodybuilders, particularly ones whose hematocrit is too high and out of range. Like we've seen, mine is completely fine, so nothing to worry about here. But in bodybuilders who do have slightly thicker blood, we can see MPV climb, and it just shows that the actual size of the platelets are a little bit bigger, again contributing to thicker blood, and that could have a whole host of health problems that come with it. But mine completely fine. Now we'll move on to kidney health. Again, completely fine. Creatinine as a waste marker, completely fine. EGFR, which is estimated glomerular filtration rate, essentially it's estimated, so it is not the most accurate measure of kidney function, but it just shows how efficiently the kidneys are filtering blood. And as we can see, I'm still in range. I'm in the lower end of that range. So it shows that potentially they are working a little bit harder to filter said blood than someone else. But the fact that I'm still very reasonably in a good range is fantastic by me. So we'll move over and we'll move to liver health. Oh shit! Yeah, see that doesn't make good reading there. I would hate to show that to my mother because she would shit herself. But in reality, to those who know what they're looking at, it's really not that bad. So again, we talk about results in isolation compared to looking at them alongside corresponding results. My bilirubin, my ALP, my GGT is completely fine. So my alanine phosphatase and my gamma glutamyl transferase, probably butchering that there, are completely fine. And then my ALT, which is my alanine transferase, is obviously quite high. Now, we can probably push this down to the fact that I was in a prep. I was using a fair amount of orals, and they are not good for levels of hepatotoxicity. They're not fucking great for you, but I am a professional. I did win my IFBB Pro card, so I'm more than happy and aware of the risks of taking the drugs that I did. This marker here to show a fairly high level of liver stress, but what we can also take from this is that the liver is also quite resilient. So if I took this test even a couple of days later, we could see it be more around here, and even now, a week and a bit, maybe close to 2 weeks after taking this test, it might even have dropped down to here, given the fact that all orals have been completely pulled. Haven't took any orals since the day of the show. So actually, this isn't quite as bad as it would look on paper. My plan of action here is obviously not using any oral anabolics. I don't drink, so that takes care of that there. And to just continue with a high level of liver supplementation with things like Todca and acetylcysteine, trained by JP Vital Support, which you can get at EliteSuppsUK, code Liam10, save yourself some money, help your boy out. Or something like a Strom Sports Support Max, both products that are very similar in panels, the Vital Support and Support Max. Very, very similar panels. They're pretty much going to cover all your bases for your cycle support. Todca alongside is going to help your liver as well. So alongside not using any oral drugs, not drinking, which I wouldn't anyway, and keeping supplementation high, I'm really not too worried about that result, at least not as much as you'd think you should be based on what it looks like on paper. Proteins. Total protein, albumin, globulin, absolutely fine. SHBG, by looks of this, in the bin. But why this isn't a bad thing is because there's actually something you kind of, or at least I kind of want. So your SHBG, your sex hormone binding globulin, is, the way I describe this is essentially it's like the hormone police. It's a protein that basically hangs on street corners in the blood and orders unbound hormones to go and bind with their relevant receptor. Now what this means is if you have an elevated level of SHBG, you're going to have less free hormones. Now from a bodybuilding perspective, especially if we're taking in exogenous synthetic testosterone, you want as much of that as possible to be free to get as much use of that as possible. So I use a PED called Proviron. It's not particularly popular. As an anabolic, it is piss weak. I believe it was the first anabolic ever invented, or at least used medicinally. It cannot withstand breakdown by 3-alpha hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase. That's a fucking mouthful. Essentially just means as a something to build muscle, it's fucking shit. More in the swear jar. But what it does do is it binds very heavily to SHBG, keeps the level of that down in the blood, which means that your free hormones are going to be a little bit higher. So essentially using this makes the other things that you use a little bit more efficient. And because of its chemical structure, it's not C17-alpha alkylated like your toxic orals. It's 1-alpha methylated, which essentially means it's just a lot less hepatotoxic. So it's not really a particularly dangerous drug. You can also, as long as you're looking after yourself, run it year round. So I do that. It keeps my SHBG down. This is a conscious effort to keep it here. It makes everything else a little bit more, it makes my other PED use more effective and more efficient. So whilst this is in the red on paper or on screen, it's completely fine by me. So diabetes, my HbA1c, which is my hemoglobin A1c, oh fucking hell, hemoglobin A1c is essentially a bit of a marker of insulin sensitivity and where you are on that diabetic risk chart. As we can see, I'm completely fine, as you would hope I should be, coming out of a prep where food, particularly carbohydrates and glycogen, has been lower for an extended period of time. So you shouldn't really be seeing this climb at all. In the off season, when you're pushing 6, 7, 8, 900 grams of carbs for extended periods of time, this can be seen to climb a little bit. But in that instance, if it is starting to climb and your things like your fasting blood glucose as well are starting to climb, you would probably look to use some kind of exogenous insulin. I'm not going to go too far into that because that is a rabbit hole and not what the topic of this video is. But as you can see here, completely fine. Cholesterol status. So before I scroll down a little bit more, this contains the second biomarker along with ALT that I think needs addressing and is of, mild concern. So, you can see my total cholesterol is fine. My LDL cholesterol, which low density lipoprotein is typically seen as so-called bad cholesterol, is fine. My HDL, high density lipoprotein, typically seen as good cholesterol, is in the fucking bin. It's gone. Let's be honest, it's not there. It's really not great. Now, genetically, this is something that has never been great with me. Even as a natural athlete, my HDL wasn't brilliant, and it is something that I've always struggled with on cycle. Even regardless of what PEDs I use, what health supplementation I use, it's always something I struggle and always will struggle with to keep in range. Everyone has that kind of one thing that they, are predisposed to struggle a little bit more with. For me, it's HDL, but really this is not a fucking good result. That being said, it's also not too surprising. Obviously, using high androgens for, about 16 weeks of a 20-something week prep. Lots of orals as well. Not a particularly high fat intake in my diet. Shit happens. So HDL, high density lipoprotein, it is supposedly seen as your so-called protective cholesterol, so you do want to keep that in as good a place as possible. In reality, for PED using bodybuilders, bigger, heavier guys and gals, if we could float around even the sort of 0.8, 0.9 to 1 mark, that's generally a pretty good range for most of us, I would say. This kind of 1 to 5 mark, in fact, you're never going to see a PED using bodybuilder at this end of the scale here. So these ranges are obviously all just for the average person. You've got to take into account that bodybuilders are not average people. So I would be happy if I could get mine before I go back into off-season and, any amounts of PEDs do get deployed again. I would be very happy if I could get mine back to the sort of 0.8, 0.9 range. I would be very, very happy with that. So plan of action there, I think, again, similar to the ALT in my liver, is just keep supplementation high. I use Strom Lipid Max, again, EliteSuppsUK, Liam 10, save some money, help me boy out. You could also use Trained by JP, Love Heart, Supplement Needs, CV Stack. I've used all in the past. Again, the panels on them are pretty similar. I'd say they're mostly interchangeable in terms of the benefits you're going to get from them. Put a little bit of body weight back on, get some dietary fats a little bit higher. My omega-3 supplementation has remained high all throughout prep and will continue to remain high. Potentially I could invest in some higher quality omega-3s. At the moment I do just get them off Amazon, which, you prep's expensive. You've got to look to save money in some places, and maybe that's somewhere that's caused me to suffer somewhat. So some higher quality omega-3s for sure. And yeah, I do have some, I'm going to fucking butcher the pronunciation of this, ezetimibe, which is it's a prescription medication that is essentially there to help boost HDL or lower LDL by inhibiting or lowering cholesterol binding in the liver. However, I'm not going to say too much more on that because I don't know what effect that's going to have on a liver that is already slightly stressed. So that's not something I'm going to talk about too much if I'm not wholly confident on the full effects of that. So HDL is in the bin, but we know what we need to do to correct it. We've got all the time in the world to correct it, and yeah, it's not the end of the world. I'm not gonna die, not yet. Anyway, I know. Up the dose, bro. Triglycerides, fine as well. So going on to iron status, maybe not. There we go. Ferritin, completely fine. And again, we also see that we can look at this result in conjunction with our red cells, which were completely fine. So we'll move on to thyroid. Now, I didn't use any exogenous thyroid hormone for my prep because I didn't need it, clearly. And I'm very surprised that after 20, 21 weeks of dieting, whatever it was, that my thyroid is still healthy. I for sure thought it would be a little bit fucked, but it's all right. And the fact that I didn't use any exogenous thyroid hormone as well means there's no need for any continued use. There's no need to really kind of pay any real attention to it. It's fine. We can just ignore it and let it do its thing. So, move on to hormones. Now, this is probably the exciting bit that most people want to see. It's a bit like a tub of pre-workout. People go, "Oh, bro, how much caffeine's in it?" Because caffeine is the only fucking thing they've ever heard of. Likewise, in Bloodwork, people only want to know, "Ooh, what's your testosterone levels?" I've got to be honest, not that fucking exciting. In fact, according to this, I'm basically natty. So if I can use this to claim my natty card back, then you best fucking believe I will. Natural IFBB Pro. So we look at this: FSH, LH, follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, your fertility hormones, essentially. They're not there. So you take in synthetic testosterone, which I do, shuts down natural production of it. Now, synthetic hormones are not fully bioidentical to endogenous, naturally produced hormones. One of the differences being with testosterone, at least, that it doesn't come with the FSH and LH production that natural test does. So, of course, as soon as you shut down your natural production, your FSH and your LH are going to go to the fucking bin too. That's not to say I'm infertile. It's not to say that if I did want to start trying for children that I couldn't do it. And it's not to say that I couldn't quite easily, under the right protocols, get these back to a very good level. It's just showing that as of right now, they're not really there to a measurable amount. So we'll move on to estradiol. Is a little bit high, not massively high. It's been a lot higher with me in the past, and in terms of cycle design and where your estradiol, your estrogen sits, it's kind of a case of how high can you push it whilst remaining asymptomatic. So in terms of estrogen related side effects, I am at this level completely asymptomatic. Although I'm above range, I don't have any gyno issues presently, don't have any blood pressure issues, don't have masses of water retention, brain fog, libido issues, ED issues, nothing like that. So it's fine for it to sit out of range for me. And like I said, it's been higher in the past, so I'm really not too bothered about this at all. My testosterone is, for someone who takes in exogenous testosterone, it's low. In fact, this is a lower result than when I was natural and before I'd ever took anything. That was 24 point something. But you kind of can't really take anything valuable from this hormone panel here because of the way peak week is so different day to day, and because of the variance in drugs that are used over that last week, particularly over that last few days. You've got some aromatizing compounds, you've got some non-aromatizing, some that are faster acting, some that are slower acting. It's gonna push and pull your hormones pretty much all over the place. And if I took this test 24 hours before and 24 hours after, I could have quite different results. So there's nothing really valuable that I can take out of this from a hormone level perspective. But I already know from off-season blood work what level of things like testosterone and other compounds, what level of these PEDs put me at what level of hormones. So I already know from that perspective what I need to know. There's just nothing really valuable we can take from here. And then as a little side note, you can see free testosterone is, even though my overall testosterone level is slap, bang average, my free testosterone is high and elevated, and that's because if we go back to my SHBG is being suppressed. Now, my prolactin is through the roof. This isn't great. Again, somewhat, if you're asymptomatic, it's not a problem. I am asymptomatic with prolactin here. My general ideas as to why this would be so high: one, tren can and will elevate your prolactin along with your progesterone as well. That isn't on here. That isn't on this test. Tren can elevate your prolactin. I did use that for the last 2.5 weeks of prep. So we can probably put some of the blame on that. Again, asymptomatic, so it's not really a problem. I'm not sorry, no milky discharge from these nips. I don't have any erectile or libido issues presently. On that topic, again, purely in the interest of educational purposes and the fact that we are looking at my blood work, and I am completely honest and open about all this. Another thing that can push prolactin higher, at least temporarily, can't believe I'm going to say this on the internet, is orgasming. And I will readily admit, on the morning of getting these bloods taken, I had an orgasm. It was great. Thanks for asking. But yeah, that's something that can skew that result north a little bit. So again, combination of having an orgasm and taking tren has pushed prolactin a bit high. I can't believe I've just said that. No one in the history of the internet has ever said that sentence before. The combination of orgasming and pushing tren. Whatever. We're open here. We're talking about this openly from an educational perspective. Let's move on to prostate. Now, PSA, prostate-specific antigen, completely fine. Now, essentially, this shows the health of the prostate. What it doesn't show is whether the prostate itself is getting bigger. I believe the only way to check that is the finger test. But in terms of actual prostate health, we're good. DHTs, dihydrotestosterone, so things like your masteron, primobolan, things that I have pushed throughout this prep, they can be known to not be particularly prostate friendly, but this result shows that we are all's good on that standpoint. And that is my blood work there. So relatively speaking, all things considered, we're in a good place. Few things that need to be corrected, but to cut a long story short, we're not dying yet, which I thought I would be. I thought this might come back with a warning sticker and a countdown timer for how long I've got left on this planet. But no, we're pretty good. So I do hope you got some educational value out of this very low budget, low production value video. I hope you might have even got some fucking entertainment value out of this. But yeah, I guess we've got to round off this video now. Like, share, subscribe, comment, tell me what a douchebag I am. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video in however many months' time when I pull my finger out and make a second YouTube video because I'm shit at making content. Goodbye.